Welcome in. It is your host, Eric Bach. Welcome to the Look Right Naked podcast. Today, I'm going to break down a simple fat loss formula. I've been a coach for 15 years. I've helped people lose and keep off over 130 pounds for good. And these 9 steps have helped over 1,100 of my clients lose that body fat for good. And so here's what you need to know. Here's what you need to do. And pay close attention to number 7 that we're going to break down because most people do not get this one right. So the most important thing that you can do from the jump is you have to get clear on what your goal is. A lot of people operate from this idea of saying, I want to get into shape, I want to lose weight. And when they never determine what the end goal is, they can never determine what success actually looks like. And so people, one, they don't have the commitment needed to achieve a certain level because they haven't decided what that level is going to be. And then they don't know when a diet is actually done. And what happens is people get stuck in this constant long-term dieting component. And if you've been around the block long enough, you realize that fat loss dieting is not inherently healthy for your body. It leads to a lot of downregulation of different body systems that are not going to help you optimize and perform your best. Plus, the longer you diet, the harder it is to actually lose body fat, which is obviously not something that any of us want. So we need to get clear on what your goal is and set a realistic timeline for what it's going to take to accomplish that goal. So if we look at the maximum rates of fat loss, we're talking 0.5 pound to 2 pounds per week, really depending on your size, right? So for a lot of people, about 1 pound a week is a really accurate thing, especially if you want to be able to build the habits that are needed to be able to keep that weight off at the same time. So think about this. If you've got 50 pounds to lose, what's a realistic timeline? It's probably a year, right? It's not 90 days. It's not whatever these challenges that we see that are all over social media are saying. You might be able to lose that weight quickly, but you're not going to establish the habits that are going to be needed to be able to keep that weight off for good. And that's where a ton of people struggle. So get clear on the timeline and break down by looking at 0.5 pound to 2 pounds per week, depending on your size, how long that can theoretically take. Next, we also have to consider the maximum rate of fat loss is not what most people can do. What we have to consider is to have a maximum rate of fat loss, you have to be doing everything right. You have to nail your training. You have to be getting that 7 to 8 hours of sleep. You have to stay on track with your diet. That means you're not cheating every single Friday because you want to go out and have 7 beers, right? Like it's about dialing in all these factors. In addition, if you are metabolically unhealthy, if you've been trying to diet, having very low calorie intake for long periods of time, followed by big binges that lead to weight gain, then it's going to take you even longer because a lot of people end up dealing with some metabolic adaptations where there's no consistency in what they eat. And because they have these massive swings, they actually have a lower resting metabolic rate and then their body's predisposed to getting more fat when they, again, binge. So we have to understand where exactly you're starting from. And it might require anywhere from 3 to 6 months of consistent dieting around a maintenance level to get your body back to a healthy point where it can actually lose weight. We have to know that your body is not going to want to lose weight in an environment that is inherently unhealthy because your body doesn't want to lose weight. Your body wants to hold on to that. Your body thinks you're going to need that body fat for a famine, for something else going on. And so we have to be able to correct some of the baseline health things if you're going to be able to lose fat effectively. And if we don't, adding more stress via trying to diet aggressively is only going to stall your ability to lose that weight long term. Now, when it comes to setting your goal, we have to be clear on your why. Losing body fat, keeping it off is difficult. It's not just about following the numbers. It's not just about eating a calorie deficit, eating enough protein, getting workouts in, all of that stuff. A lot of times it comes down to changing what you're doing on a daily basis. It comes down to changing your habits. It might even change your relationships and the dynamics of what you do with certain people, right? Like you might have a group of friends that you absolutely love, but your entire social structure is built around going out and drinking or eating junk food or laying on a couch, picking Cheeto dust on your belly buttons, a la what Bedros Keuilian says, and chilling at night, right? These are all things that might change dynamically. And so if you're not clear on why you want to lose fat, if you're not clear on how it's going to improve, not just the way that you see yourself in the mirror and how it's going to actually improve your personal life, your professional life, because your body's more effective down to the cellular level and you're more disciplined, then it's going to be very difficult to stick with that process. And so you have to get clear on what the goal is and what the timeline is. It doesn't mean that you can't be flexible on what that timeline ends up being, but you have to be clear on the goal and your commitment to the process has to be dialed in if you're going to be able to lose that weight and you're going to keep it off. Number 2, how to set up your diet. Now, this is going to be a highly individual thing for all the factors that I just mentioned, but here's some great baseline advice. If you follow a diet that's greater than a 30% calorie deficit, you can definitely lead to a decrease in performance in the gym, which can then lead to muscle loss and even fat loss plateaus. If your diet is not designed properly and you're losing lean muscle at the same rate that you're losing body fat, your metabolism is going to slow down. when this happens and you try to go back to eating the way that you did previously, your body might be from burning 1,800 calories a day down to 14. And so you go off track for a few days and all of a sudden it feels like you gain all the way back because you did, because your metabolism is actually slower, right? Dieting more aggressively isn't always the recipe. It might work for a very short 3 to 4 period block of time, but there are metabolic consequences that happen down the backside. So be aware of that. But if we're setting up a diet, a very simple baseline to get started with a moderately aggressive diet would be body weight in pounds times 10 or even times 12. This can be a great starting point to find where your calories are at. Now, you might be listening to this thinking like, oh my God, that's more than I eat right now. Well, that's a pretty good sign that you've been under eating for a long period of time, which is something I see quite a bit. But let's continue to run this example back. Body weight in pounds times 10. All right, you're 200 pounds. That's 2,000 calories. A simple split to break this up would be 40, 30, 30. Fairly even split between your protein, your fat, and your carbohydrates. I like to err on the side of higher protein. In this case, 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight is 1. Shown that that's been about ideal when it comes to losing body fat and retaining as much muscle. It's also going to help keep you more full. Protein is the most satiating macronutrient, and 30% of the calories from protein are broken down when you're eating it. So if you're going to eat something a lot more, it's going to keep you more full and you're not going to gain fat from it. Well, hey, protein, cool. Eat some more chicken, eat some more steak, whatever it is, right? So what does this look like? 2,000 calories, you'd be at about 200 grams of protein, 150 grams of carbohydrates, and 66 grams of fat. That's a balanced approach. It's going to leave you with enough fuel and variation to be able to fit most foods directly in there. Now, Adamus has been very clear that if we account for calories and protein, you can adjust your carbohydrates and fat based on a personal preference. That's definitely true. What I would recommend, though, is pick a macronutrient split, stick with it for at least 2 weeks, and work on eating the same foods consistently. If you're eating different foods all the time, you're going to have completely different digestive processes. You're never going to know what's going to work. And if you don't have that consistency, you're just kind of throwing shit at the wall and hoping something sticks. When it comes to that 2,000 calorie example, I'm a big fan of intermittent fasting in short spurts of time. Long-term, what I recommend is what I call our 4-4-40 meal method, which means 4 meals broken up about 4 hours apart with about 40 grams of protein per meal. That protein can be titrated up and down. Evidence has shown that when we keep protein consistent through our meals, our muscle protein synthesis directly from those meals is better. You're also going to have better control of your hunger cravings and your cues to be able to help lose weight and keep it off for good. Step number 3, to lose that weight and keep that shit off for good, build awareness. What does this mean? All right, so most people underestimate how much they eat by 25%. That's wild, right? 25% is not a small amount. In addition, workout trackers. I got my Apple Watch on right here. I love it for heart rate, hate it for the calorie tracking. The reason is the average calorie tracker, according to a study performed by Stanford University of Stanford, the average workout tracker is off by 27%. Some of them, this was looking at Fitbits, Samsung trackers, like, Apple Watch, all this stuff. They didn't name which one specifically, was off by 93% when it came to tracking calories. And so the chances are, if you went and played tennis yesterday, Karen, you did not burn 800 calories, right? You probably burned 200. Like, the reality is, like, these calorie trackers are way off. And so think about this. If we're underestimating how much we eat by 25% because we don't want to track calories, right? And our workouts are off by 25+%. This is a huge variation where people think that they have data that's correct and they don't, or they don't have data, they're guessing what they're doing and they wonder why it's not working. So what I recommend, you don't have to track everything forever, but track what you do eat for 2 weeks. Look at where your gaps are and improve specifically in those areas. I like to use data to direct our decisions. This is a data-driven science-backed coaching program, but it's not the only thing, right? Because when we have the data as a general direction, this allows us to really help instill the habits and behaviors that are going to be needed to lose that weight across the board. Now, in terms of building awareness and what this actually means for you in the real world, here's what I see. Most people underconsume protein. They underconsume water and they underconsume vegetables. They dramatically overconsume fat. They overconsume calories, and they eat a lot more snack foods than they anticipate. Each meal should be focused on protein and plants. If it's not focused on protein and plants, you're going to be hungry, you're going to have more cravings, you're going to be more likely to eat the stuff that's going to make you fatter, and less likely to eat the stuff that's going to help you look great naked. So we got to keep that as a focus. Of course, got to drink water, right? We got to improve that health down to the cellular level. For a lot of people, what I'll tell them to do, 20 ounces of water, a glass of water right here. Well, it was, but I drank it because I'm hydrated. Have 20 ounces of water as soon as you wake up. Put that glass of water, shaker, whatever it is, on your bathroom vanity. So you wake up, take a pee, whatever you do, probably don't poop right away, is you have that water, and then you get the ball rolling. Then with each meal, have about a 20-ounce glass of water before that meal. Voila, if you're having 4 meals and you're having this, there's 100 ounces of water. You are now properly hydrated for the day. So when you start to attach these individual action steps to different meals and things that are already going on, hey, it becomes a lot simpler to be able to lose that weight because you're doing the right things that will lead to it. Number 4, consider the consequences of low carbohydrate dieting. Listen, if I go back, I followed a lot of intermittent fasting diets, low carbohydrate diets, specifically from like 23 to 28, right? I'm 34 now for reference. So, hey, allergy season starts here in South Carolina, like way too early, full throttle allergies right now. So hopefully my voice isn't too nasally when I check this out again, but try not to have any sneezes when I'm on the air. Okay, low carbohydrate dieting. So between like 23 and 28, man, I was always trying to stay with what we call striking distance. I was probably 10% body fat year round for years. Low carbohydrate diet, stuff like that, it helped. But I will tell you that that was not the most healthy thing for hormonal health for me long term. And so a lot of people run into issues when they take a low carb diet and they push it out over a long period of time. And so here's what we need to consider. A low carbohydrate diet is not going to support optimal muscle growth. It's not going to support optimal performance in the gym or the training methods that are going to help you develop that badass, strong, lean, athletic body that you're looking for. And if you are stressed, if you're anxious, if you're not sleeping well, then a low calorie, a low carbohydrate dieting, especially if you have a lot of fasting, can create issues both with thyroid function, poor sleep, and higher levels of stress. And so the way I like to think about a low carb diet is a lot of the low carb diet stuff that you see, especially on social media, was ideally designed as a finishing tool, not a long-term diet. Like let's take physique athletes, for example. The vast majority of physique athletes will stay very high carbohydrate, say 40 to 50% carbohydrate until the last couple of weeks of cut. It's only at the very end when they're talking like getting down to low single-digit body fat, when they are getting to the point of doing water manipulation that they take carbohydrates low. And so the issue is you see people grab onto these diets because they see Mr. Olympia did this shit and try to apply it directly to what they do. Well, they're not lean enough, it's not practical, it's not sustainable, and it's going to lead to other issues, right? So we don't want to use the wrong diet at the wrong time when it's not going to serve us. So when it comes to low carbohydrate dieting, I find it's best used as a tool that you rotate in. You can do a block of low carbohydrate dieting for 4 to 6 weeks and then gradually add those carbohydrates back in. The way I like to do it, when I have somebody who joins our Look Great Naked protocol, send me a message saying lean directly on the podcast. And so the way that I like to use a lower carbohydrate diet is we will go 30 to 45 days with our Metabolic Reboot, which is going to be lower carbohydrate and it's going to be intermittent fasting. This is going to help improve your insulin sensitivity. When we do this, your body can use fuel more effectively at the cellular level. But if we keep carbohydrates like that in a diet too aggressively, then we can run into issues with stress. We can run into issues with training performance, with sleep, and with thyroid function. We'll go Reboot. We'll help get your metabolic system functioning much better. You can handle more carbohydrates. And then we start cycling carbohydrates in our cyclical shredding system, meaning we'll bump up carbohydrates directly on your training days and pull it back on other ones. And so with this, we provide your body with the ability to be more efficient at the cellular level, lose fat, feel great, reduce inflammation in the beginning, but we're also taking care of your long-term metabolic health and providing the nutrients that are needed that your body can now handle more effectively via improved insulin sensitivity so you can continue to get jacked without jacking up your thyroid. Key consideration and tip number 5 is understanding that what worked before will not work forever. As your body and your life change, so should your approach to fitness. For example, if you're 38 years old, you have more stress, less sleep, more mileage on your body from training hard, different hormone levels, and less time than you did when you were 25, using that same strategy while everything else in life has changed is an absolute recipe for disaster. One of the most important things to understand, not just from body composition, but the way that you design any coaching program in general, it's not just what you're doing with your training, it's not just what you're doing with your nutrition, it's factoring these things in addition to the lifestyle stress that you have, to your sleep, to your recovery, to all of these different factors, which is where a lot of people get stuck saying, hey, I know what to do, but I'm not getting results, because the reality is they understand the individual component parts, but they don't understand how programming works as a complete picture, right? This is where a lot of people collect tips and ideas on social media, on podcasts, but they don't quite have the wisdom with how to apply it directly. And this isn't shitting on anybody. Like, this is very difficult stuff to learn. I've been a coach for 15 years, but we have to understand that what worked before is not going to work now. And if we stay mentally attached to the way that things were, we're never going to build a body that serves us for where we are now. We're never going to build a skill set that helps us adapt to where our health is going to go long term. And so without that, become very limited in the overall fat loss that we get. And we end up chasing ghosts thinking I can just eat the same way that I did when I was 25 and it's going to work. Well, the reality is it's not, especially if your hormone levels are completely different from where they were. It's just going to create an additional stressor and make things a little bit worse. Now, number 6 here is going to ruffle some feathers, but your metabolism did not slow down. You did. Human metabolism, human metabolic function doesn't slow down until age 60, except for medical instances, dysregulation of thyroid, stuff that you actually have the data to reinforce because it's actually happened, right? So what happens is a lot of people blame their metabolic function, when in reality what happens is they sit more, they exercise less, they sleep like crap, and they overeat. These are all completely changeable things. Heck, sometimes they yo-yo diet and they mess up their metabolic function. What we have to understand is when we're getting older, it doesn't just change at one certain age. It doesn't. The things that we do within our life change, and that leads to the changes in metabolic function. The key is understanding that we are completely in control of these factors, of how much we move, of the types of foods that we eat, of trying to improve our sleep. It doesn't mean that I don't empathize with things getting tougher. I can tell you that it's tougher at 34 than it was when I was 25 because I don't get as much sleep. I got a busier career, kids, all this stuff, it matters. I can also tell you that I don't sleep as well as I did before, that I probably have more stimulants than I did before, right? These all play a role, okay? And so when it comes to understanding what we need to do from an exercise perspective, we should be focusing on lifting weights 4 times per week. 40, 50 minutes, something like that is perfectly fine. 4 to 5 lifts per session, 2 to 3 minutes rest between our sets. Focusing on compound exercises, primarily focus on building strength in the beginning, using multiple low rep sets of a compound exercise, say 5 to 8 reps, and then increasing the reps as we go to be able to create more metabolic stress and build that muscle tissue. We have to make weightlifting the primary component because building that lean tissue and maintaining as much of it as we can is what supports that metabolic powerhouse. Whereas a lot of people will stop lifting weights, or they weren't lifting weights in the beginning, they just got away with it, and pretty soon they lose that muscle and then their metabolic function slows down. So we have to be able to train in a way that's going to support optimal metabolic function and longevity, not just blaming our metabolism for slowing down, when in reality we are in complete control of the situation if we want to take the right steps. Now, piggybacking off of that, point number 7 is your metabolism is dynamic. There are a lot of different things that happen. A lot of people run into issues because they go online and they see a calorie calculator. It says, I'm moderately active. I work out for 1 to 3 hours per week and I want to lose fat aggressively. Shoots out a fucking number and it says, this is how many calories you should eat. Cool. Do you think that equation or that algorithm knows what's going on with your unique metabolism? What's going on with your sleep, your exercise, how long you exercise, how much and what you eat, the types of diets that you followed before, your overall, hormone profile? Does it know any of that? It doesn't. And so we have to understand that your metabolism, trying to come off with just a baseline equation, that is a rough estimate. It is not gospel. Your metabolism is dynamic based on all these things that I mentioned: how you exercise, how long you exercise, how much you sleep, your stress levels, your hormone levels, how much and what you eat, the types of diets that you followed previously. And so when we operate from a mindset of this stagnant thing, I eat this much because I used to eat this much and it's not working, we have to understand that all these other factors in this lifestyle that we have play a role into how our metabolism actually functions. We have to understand that our approach needs to consider not just our body weight, not just our activity level, but it's all these different factors. Within our Look Great Naked protocol, I reflect back on what we have called our synergy system, meaning we look at your training, we look at your nutrition, we look at your lifestyle, and we talk about things like sleep, stress, digestion, any anxiety that's going on, your personal life, all of these different factors, not just your workouts, not just your nutrition, because all of these things can be a signal of what's actually going on at a more hormonal, at a cellular, at a metabolic level that otherwise we don't know just by looking at an equation, right? And it's being able to synthesize and understand these other cues that your body's giving you if you want to be able to build a system where you are a metabolic detective, so to speak, and you can understand how your metabolism evolves over time. When you gain control of this and you start to work these things in tandem, in sequence, then you can really lose fat and keep it off. Quick example, your metabolism being dynamic. If you are following a workout program that has a ton of heavy lifting, a lot of volume, and you also have high intensity type of training, if we are following a diet that's too aggressive, we're not getting enough sleep, and it's low carbohydrate, we're not giving our body the fuel source that it needs, which increases cortisol. Our body's already elevated in terms of stress because we're stressed. We're not getting enough sleep. That's going to increase inflammation. It's going to increase cortisol. It's going to decrease thyroid. And pretty soon, just because you're doing things that are healthy, they're not aligned with the overall goals that you have. And so if we have this misalignment, a lot of people get stuck doing things that they think are healthy, but it's not actually serving them. And so it comes down to knowing exactly what we need to be doing and how these factors play off of each other if you want to be able to look great naked without living in the gym. Finally, lack of focus on what actually matters. The vast majority of people look at fat loss as cardio, nutrition, and then weight training. When the reality is like the focus should be nutrition, weight training, and then cardio. Nutrition is going to be the biggest lever by far. I already talked about how calorie estimations are off by, on average, at least 25, 27%. Some are off by 90%, and we dramatically undereat. Just by doing a little bit more activity, it's a great starting point. But if you really want to transform your body, we have to be focused on eating for fat loss. We have to be clear on how much we should be eating, in what proportions, and when we should be doing it. Then our weight training can burn as many calories as cardiovascular exercise directly during the session and during the 24 hours afterward. In addition, long-term, it's going to help you build lean muscle, which increases your baseline metabolic function, so you burn more calories over time. Cardio, while it can be great for burning calories, for improving your health, for improving your ability to break down different nutrients and use them effectively, the more you do a particular type of cardio, the more efficient you get at it. This is great in the world of sport performance. You want to burn fewer calories during a particular type of exercise. For fat loss, it's the opposite. And so where people run into issue is they start doing a certain amount of cardio, they neglect weight training, and then they eat a little bit less. Pretty soon they're burning half as many calories as they were a couple of weeks ago, but they don't have any more time to exercise. And pretty soon they stall out for fat loss. So we want to make sure that our nutrition is the first thing that we emphasize. The second is weight training. So we build and maintain as much lean tissue to support long-term metabolic function. And then we add cardio in to support overall health and burn a few more calories, but not doing so much that we actually shoot ourselves in the foot. Now, these simple strategies, they're practical, they're straightforward. They can help you make an important and a life-changing transformation. However, if you are trying to collect tips, hoping that this is going to be the thing that's going to help you get over the hump, again, take these and run with them. But if you want a practical, built-for-you solution, head over to bachperformance.com/coaching. Fill out a short application, and I will show you how we can help you rapidly transform your life. Now, if you're getting a lot of value directly from this podcast, hey, the reason that we can keep this show free of advertisements, free of those annoying ones that you can't skip that I found on the Joe Rogan podcast that was driving me nuts the other day. Like, I don't need another Athletic Greens advertisement. Sorry, even if it tastes pretty good. Drop us a 5-star review over on Amazon, over on Spotify, over on Apple, whichever podcast platform you listen to. That is how we keep the show free. That's how we keep getting more value. And of course, the feedback helps us focus on topics that are going to provide the best value for you to help you look great naked without living in the gym. Until next time, I'll see you later. Hey, it's Eric here again. Now, there are 3 ways that I can help you look great naked. Number 1, if you want to grab a free copy of the Look Great Naked protocol to help you lose body fat without counting calories, then go to bachperformance.com/free training. Number 2, if you're a busy guy looking to build muscle, then I recommend checking out our Minimalist Muscle Blitz, which has helped over 1,000 men build muscle without living in the gym. Just go to minimalistmuscleblitz.com. The link will also be available in the show notes. Or number 3, and last, if you want to work with me directly and get the best results possible, apply at bachperformance.com/coaching to look great naked without living in the gym. Until next time, my friend,